Welcome to another episode of On TRAC, the show where we bring you all the latest and juiciest developments from the OriginTrail ecosystem and the verifiable internet for artificial intelligence that the OriginTrail technology is crucially enabling. As always, I'm your host, Jonathan, and this week we were joined by a very special guest, Martin Köppelmann, who is a co-founder of the Ethereum Layer 2 Gnosis Chain. Together with OriginTrail co-founders Tomaž, Branimir, and Žiga, we had a really interesting conversation about the power of artificial intelligence, particularly AI agents, which both OriginTrail and Gnosis are working on incorporating into their respective projects. We also checked in on the recently launched Delegated track staking program for the Decentralized Knowledge Graph, aka the DKG, which is running on Gnosis Chain, as well as explored some of the real-world and real-value use cases of both OriginTrail and Gnosis. So trust me, you are in for a treat. On TRAC is recorded live, and with each episode, we take you, the listeners, questions and incorporate them into that month's conversation. So if you like what you hear in this episode, follow OriginTrail on X at origin_trail to get notified about the next episode and how to submit questions. So, without any further ado, here is episode 2 of the On TRAC podcast. I guess before we dive into the core topics of the episode, just to kind of kick things off with a fun question, the OriginTrail team has had a busy month. You had the GS1 conference, you had the Google OriginTrail meetup. So are there any fun takeaways? What was your favorite thing about those two important events that y'all were very present at?
I mean, it's been a very interesting couple of weeks for us. You can also hear it by my voice, which is kind of half there. And yeah, it's really hard to single out. Like, we had so many good encounters with, like you said, both Google crowd just 2 days ago in Amsterdam, and actually the OriginTrail community, who a bunch of you flew in to see the event, which was really a great positive surprise. It was really, really exciting meeting everybody. And yeah, it was really, really good just exchanging ideas with the crowd over there. And at GS1 Global Forum the week before, it was very much about enterprise adoption and how actually we presented 3 different groups of implementations of OriginTrail DKG actually within the industry and based on the GS1 standards. So actually still unpacking what's happened over the past couple of weeks and following up has been really, really inspiring. And looking forward to actually kicking things further on in parallel with those, especially now today that we have Martin with us here, because all the while these events were happening, the team has been working on actually releasing the major release of OriginTrail on Gnosis. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. That's also exciting. Looking forward to chatting about that in the podcast as well. And yeah, just overall, very, very exciting couple of weeks.
Yeah. Wasn't that good? I'm just kidding. It was really, it was a lot of fun, man. Yeah, for those that maybe aren't familiar, but starting with Brussels, it's a very fun event because it's kind of like a gathering of GS1 family in a way, because the GS1 by nature, they all have their national organizations scattered around the globe, and then once a year they bring the cool things happening within their ecosystem to Brussels, which is where their global office is headquartered. And yeah, it's very good to see because there's a level of understanding already between the participants around the power of the GS1 standards. So there's one kind of stair that you can always jump over already in the conversations. And now where, obviously Branimir mentioned, we were in a few of those sessions, I think 3 across the week, where we were showcasing the strength not only of GS1 standards, but also pairing them with OriginTrail DKG and the capabilities of artificial intelligence. And yeah, it sparked a lot of ideas. So that was pretty cool. And then Google, of course, it was just a couple of days ago. Amsterdam was very exciting. And thanks from my end as well to those that showed up and those that tuned in online.
I guess I also need to pitch in both GS1 and Amsterdam with Google. I think it was a nice continuation of what was started a few years ago already, 6 years ago, when we gotten into the audience of enterprises that really aim to use the technology for what it is intended. So for real world usage, how to improve transparency and trust when it comes to Industry 4.0 and now increasingly when it comes to artificial intelligence. And it's really cool to have a guest today here with us, Martin. Some 5 years ago, I believe, 5 years ago, we launched the first version of OriginTrail. I believe that was a version 4 or version 5 on Gnosis. And reflecting again on that, since already back then, OriginTrail had a pretty formidable pipeline of companies that were intending to use blockchain for many interesting use cases. And back then, the main, I guess, bottleneck proved to be blockchain, more specifically, the Ethereum network, which was not intended for direct enterprise usage. And since we had moved OriginTrail Decentralized Knowledge Graph, I remember then, from just Ethereum to Gnosis. I believe back then it was still called XDAI. I believe we got even a 10x plus scalability in terms of the cost. And that actually gave us kind of this first, a little bit more wide scale ability to tackle enterprise challenges. And it's really cool to have Martin with us for us to hear and the community to hear more about the plans Gnosis has and also the complementarity with the project such as the Decentralized Knowledge Graph is for the verifiable internet for the artificial intelligence, which is now, I think, becoming a big topic and is going to become an even bigger topic because AI is essentially becoming the biggest bullshit generator there is.
Awesome. I had the opportunity of watching the Google Meet live as it happened, not in person, unfortunately, but I watched the live stream of it and it was very exciting. And I saw a lot of people in the OriginTrail community that were also very excited about it. And I can only imagine that a lot of, to use the word exciting a third time, a lot of exciting things are going to come from just that gathering of alpha brains and very smart people all in one room. So I guess to really dive into the topic of today's episode, let me introduce again Martin, who's the co-founder of Gnosis Chain. Now, OriginTrail V6 was just integrated with Gnosis Chain in 2023, and Gnosis Chain has been the home of Delegated Staking, the Delegated Staking pilot program that OriginTrail recently launched and has officially gone live. So for Martin, can you just give us a quick, very brief high-level overview of Gnosis Chain and how it works for those who may not be super familiar with it?
Yeah, sure. So Gnosis Chain actually started as one of the first chains beside Ethereum. So it became at some point, as mentioned a minute ago, already pretty clear that Ethereum could not, basically there was not enough block space to do all the use cases people wanted to do. And the end result was that block space just became extremely expensive, or transactions became extremely expensive on Ethereum, and still are. Back then, XDAI started as a chain, basically saying, okay, we want to create something as similar as possible to Ethereum. We basically just want to create more of this block space that a lot of people like, because you can build great stuff on top of it. At that period, Gnosis, we were actually building ourselves applications on Ethereum. So we started, we had them all on Ethereum, but we also had to go to other places. And then we went to this chain XDAI, back then called, simply because transactions were much cheaper. And a few years later, we had to decide, basically we came to the conclusion that we should double down on this chain, and we merged with that team and turned essentially this chain into Gnosis Chain, and to make sure that it is very well developed and continues. So what it does is it's a chain as similar as possible to Ethereum. So it uses the same staking mechanism as Ethereum, and that is basically the only one besides Ethereum. So that means we have a very large validator set, and we are proud that essentially everyone can become a validator on Gnosis. All you need is one GNO token, and that would make you one out of currently 200,000 validators that are running the chain. To us, that's super critical to have not a chain run by, 3-4 entities or 3-4 large data centers, but actually from a wide range of people. So that's just Gnosis Chain in general. But in the last year, we simply saw, everyone saw it, the explosion of AI. But of course, we were specifically interested in agents. So in a way, taking AI a step further and giving it capabilities to do things autonomously. And we feel, or are convinced, that blockchain is the perfect substrate for that. So an agent won't get a bank account, won't get a credit card, but still they want to be able to pay each other and do things. And blockchains are, in that sense, super machine friendly and agent friendly. And Yeah, that's where we started to build a cluster and do various activities. We will go into those, I'm sure. That's where also the connection again to OriginTrail came. As mentioned, they were in a way on the chain before us even. But now, we are kind of doubling down.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're definitely going to get into the AI agents. It's a big topic, very important, and obviously very relevant, especially with all of the talks around just, it's like AI is basically inescapable at this point. It feels like it's everywhere. It's in every conversation that I have. It feels like it's certainly everywhere in the crypto world. But before we dive into that, just to stick on the staking topic for a minute here, like I said before, delegated staking is obviously now live on Gnosis Chain. And I just saw that as of February 28, which is yesterday at the time of recording, over 18 million TRAC tokens have already been staked on the chain. So last episode, if you missed it, I suggest you go back and watch it. We went into a very sort of detailed look into what delegated staking looks like, sort of a very brief summary, and the OriginTrail team can obviously correct me if I'm wrong here, but users delegate their TRAC to nodes. When a publisher publishes a knowledge asset on the DKG, the nodes host that asset, they get paid in TRAC in return, and everyone who participates in the staking gets a percentage of those rewards along with the person who is running the node. So outside of the obvious economic incentive for users to want to stake and participate in staking, what is the importance of staking for the DKG itself? And then what is it about Gnosis Chain specifically that made it the best place to launch this first version of the staking program?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. The one that you last posted to start with and continue off where Martin was explaining. Gnosis Chain, I mean, we had a really great experience over the years. And that's not for just no reason. It's because it turns out, and that's also why we chose Gnosis back in the day when it was called XDAI, is that it was just really well built. Not just built in the sense of, doing the technology the right way, but also everything around it. So back in the day, even all of the audits were available, and the team basically did all of the necessary homework to sort of tick all of the boxes that we wanted to see ticked. If you see all of the things going around generally within the Web3 space, you see all kinds of things like, from bridge problems to, just generally chains halting and whatnot. We never had a single thing like that happen to us with Gnosis. And it's been really a pleasure. And it's obviously, due to the quality of the team. It's one of the big reasons why everything OriginTrail related to Ethereum essentially in the last couple of years is happening there. And it's showing basically really good performance. So it was a natural choice. It was a really natural choice. We also have great admiration for the team behind Gnosis because they're very much OGs since, like, Martin can correct me, but I think 2015, 16, something, when you guys started building.
Yeah, 14.
14. Wow. 10-year anniversary this year, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. No, it's fantastic. And it's building all kinds of things, right? We've seen everything from from our experience, the most safest, I think, multi-sig wallet even today started as a multi-sig wallet, then became safe. So then outside of safe, then the chain, obviously, and now all of the new cool stuff that you guys are launching. I'm actually very curious to ask you about that later, to tell us a little bit more about what else is new in the world of Gnosis. You mentioned the AI team, but also the Gnosis Pay. So I think in general, there's very few teams you can come around and say that they've done so much in such a good way. It's very easy choice to pick Gnosis Chain as one of the chains to go to. And yeah, when it comes to staking, I guess I wouldn't want to go too deep because we did really go in depth last time. And there's actually a lot of info right now. I encourage everybody to go and check out the staking page on the DKG Explorer. Essentially, there's almost 10% of total amount of tokens locked in staking right now on both chains. The first releases have been out. We've been basically verifying that everything is operating correctly and that all of the system properties are in line, the KPIs are at the right pace. Overall, it seems like it's going pretty well. And what we're seeing on Gnosis, which is very interesting, is essentially a ramp up of kind of a different nature of knowledge than what the community might have been previously encountering on NeuroWeb and generally within the chains. So there's a lot of public knowledge that's being published on Gnosis. So yeah, it's going to be very exciting. And anybody who's interested in this topic, one maybe point here that is kind of different than your usual staking that you hear about in crypto is that it's not inflationary. So it's not like, somebody somewhere coded nothing against inflation, though, don't get me wrong, but it's not like, just printing machine creating the rewards or APR or whatever you want to call it. Rather, it's different. The token is already basically totally minted and there's no inflation. So that essentially the rewards are from the usage of the network. So whoever is publishing knowledge assets to the network, they essentially pay in TRAC tokens, just as you use ETH on Ethereum to pay for gas, or XDAI on Gnosis. Pretty much the same principle applies here, using TRAC to use the DKG. And essentially these fees are then distributed among everybody who's participating, and that meaning the people who are locking their TRAC in the nodes. It's really exciting. We've been really looking forward to this release for a while. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what's unfolding in the next couple of weeks. There's also a very interesting note here that I guess we haven't spoken about before, or we did maybe mention it at the Google meetup. One of our advisors, Dr. Bob Metcalf, is also running one node on the DKG. So the founder of Ethernet and Turing Award winner has currently, I'm looking at the page, node number 6 in rank of stake. So that's a pretty cool new thing. It's actually him. It's not like somebody making a joke out of it and putting up a name there. So there you go. If staking is not interesting to you, then it's interesting for Bob. We had him speak at the event. He was really, really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say after a few months. But yeah, really, really excited for this.
Wonderful. So we got a couple of questions from the community about whether or not there are any risks inherent in bridging your tokens or moving your tokens from Ethereum to Gnosis. So maybe, Martin, you can speak on that. What's the bridging process like of moving tokens from Ethereum to Gnosis, and what does Gnosis do to make sure that those tokens remain safe and the bridge remains safe?
It is, I would say, an unfortunate reality that I think I would lie if I would say there's no risk. I think kind of almost any contract you touch, anything you do on chain, there is always, unfortunately, some risk of there being a bug or being some form of having of compromise. That being said, of course, we are doing everything to minimize that risk, and we are extremely serious about it. And yeah, this bridge has been running since 6 years now, I believe, and has been multiple times audited. So yeah, long story short, with bridges, there are risks. We have kind of a concept of replicated security that multiple parties need to, or multiple independent protocols need to agree to a state to minimize the danger. But so it's a bridge called OmniBridge. Maybe a quick comment. Currently, the interface, I think, it's obviously working, but a new interface is coming very soon that will make the process hopefully even better or even more smooth.
Another question from the community, which might be for the OriginTrail team. Somebody was wondering the process of how nodes get rewards, like how it's determined which nodes get which rewards. Is it just based strictly on the number of tokens that are locked in, and that's it? And if you have the most number of tokens locked in the node, then you get the most number of rewards? Or is there something more to it than that?
To not risk taking over half of the podcast to describe this, because it can be very complex. Essentially, I believe we have it in the docs, but if not, I also posted about it on Twitter somewhere. So I'll share it in the Discord later. Is basically the mechanism on how this works. And essentially, it involves 3 parameters. One is the number of tokens on the node, but also involves the location of the node in the network. So there's a certain way of the nodes being organized so that essentially knowledge assets are distributed to certain areas so that they can actually be efficiently fetched. And that mimics kind of this classic system that many other peer-to-peer networks use. So it's called basically a Kademlia or hash ring type based system where a certain portion of the network is responsible for a certain piece of the knowledge hosted. But like I said, not to maybe go too deep. It's good to see it in real life, but basically these are the parameters that are relevant. And having that said, this is actually the system that right now runs on Gnosis and is being, in a way, piloted there. We're monitoring it and we're going to see if it needs any tweaks over time. The point here being is that the network is both secure and also functional in the sense that we don't get some sort of weird behavior that wouldn't, for example, allow that the knowledge can be easily and quickly retrieved from the network. And maybe just kind of to connect that with the blockchain side of things. So for the people who are listening to us and don't maybe know, the decentralized knowledge graph is actually not a blockchain. That's why it sits on top of other blockchains like Gnosis, where it uses the blockchain for what it actually kind of makes most sense for it to use. So to actually store state proofs of the knowledge within the DKG, to store actually NFTs of the knowledge assets, as well as to manage basically all of these relations between the actors in the network. So essentially implementing the OriginTrail protocol. And having that said, staking is a part of it, publishing is a part of it. There's also other utility like enhancing basically features that we've been working on, such as enabling this marketing of knowledge, exposing it to markets rather, not marketing. That's kind of an odd way to say it, but exposing it to markets. There's a lot of stuff to see. So I suggest everybody to jump and read through the docs. And if you have like really concrete questions like this, we'd be happy to answer. Also jump into Discord or ping me directly on Twitter as well. Happy to answer that. But having that said, the blockchain is used really for what it's supposed to be used, and where we don't like overload chain with a lot of knowledge, so that you will see that actually all of the data or the knowledge, in this case in knowledge graph form, sits on the DKG. And therefore, because it's there, you're able to query it using actually knowledge graph queries, which is something blockchains normally don't support because they're not designed for that, but actually allows you to do some really, really cool things. So you can ask questions. You can really ask questions in this query sense, so database sense. And effectively, if you are a node or have an access to a gateway node to the DKG, you're able to query the entirety of the knowledge within the DKG. And what's been really cool the last couple of months, and that's why we'll be talking more about AI today, is that AI helps you a lot with actually doing this querying. So you can query using, for example, natural language. And we've been showcasing those the last couple of weeks, especially for the various industries. The key point here being is that we manage actually to use LLMs in the right way. So the way that we showcase this, and we'll talk more about today, is that actually instead of asking the LLM to just give you an answer, which it might get right or maybe not, we actually go kind of the other way in this retrieval augmented generation way, where actually the LLM is used just to help you, kind of bridge between you kind of, instead of you writing the query, you sort of saying the query. So you can say, for example, I don't know, is this meat organic, or where does this product come from, or which other, let's say, similar artists to these artists that I like, can you show me? And all of these queries can then be translated into knowledge graph queries, which are very precise. So they don't let sort of the LLM kind of move out of the way and actually extract that knowledge out of the DKG. Then from the perspective of the blockchain, obviously verify that knowledge for integrity and also verify for source, which is the big property here. That's where that NFT comes into play. So within these layers, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And it's especially exciting to see like what kind of new things we can do here. And one of those things, and actually, I kind of want to actually take over your role as the moderator here to ask something to Martin. I know you guys have been doing quite a lot with agents lately. So can you tell us a little bit more about what's happening within the domain of Gnosis and AI agents, and how is Gnosis team taking a role in this world?
As I hinted at, we think AI agents are extremely powerful thing. I'm currently actually working on a blog post that describes them as a new form of life, literally. So it's a thing that can at some point replicate itself and kind of spread and accumulate resources, but even without going that deep or philosophical. So short term, one of the things that agents are certainly already good at is collecting, finding knowledge. Or basically, extracting, also specifically extracting knowledge. So therefore, we have started a program where agents are trying to make useful predictions. And that can be about about really any real world event. So what's happening in the economy, what's happening in elections, is a company releasing a product, what's happening in Ukraine, really whatever. And we are asking questions that are, later easy to answer. So kind of in 1 or 2 months, you will be easy to say, okay, this has happened or this has not happened. But right now, it's of course unclear. And the role of the agents is now to make right now predictions about whether something is happening. And the nice thing about, or why we picked that as a first task for agents, is because it's challenging. I mean, making a prediction about the future is a challenging task, but it's also still kind of verifiable. I mean, it's not immediately verifiable. If you get the prediction right now and says 40%, I mean, it's not by no means easy to say whether that was correct or not. But if you create thousands of those predictions, and we are doing that right now, then, well, over time, you, of course, create very good track records of how precise those predictions are. And therefore, you kind of get a pretty good measurement of how much actual knowledge or how much value, in a way, those agents are creating. So in summary, we think AI agents will be able to do all kinds of tasks. Short term, it seems like an interesting thing to kind of collect knowledge, and a good way to quantify this knowledge is by kind of turning it into predictions, because that can later be measured. That's where we are so far. The outlook is, that we have done with a couple of teams in the space, to mention just two, Autonolas and Nethermind. But now I think with OriginTrail, there are a bunch of ways how where there's overlap. And I would say, I mean, the primary two things are that I think at some point the agents will be collectively good enough to actually contribute to the knowledge graph, because obviously there's much more data available on the internet that is not yet in structured form, like you guys are doing it. And this task of converting unstructured data into structured data, that seems extremely promising, that agents are capable of doing that. Of course, comes with all kinds of challenges, because AI is definitely unreliable. But then you have ways to aggregate that and kind of have it, 10 agents can do it independently. And if they all come always to the same kind of structure, then it seems pretty reasonable to assume that this is the right thing. So basically saying, one is, I assume AI agents will be a big contributor to the DKG, but of course also a consumer. So to do the predictions, later any task, but short term, let's say the predictions, if there is a DKG available that has any information in it that are related to the topic they want to do this prediction, in that case, then of course they are also a consumer of someone. And that kind of further means that we can essentially have more agents working together. So kind of a single agent doesn't need to do everything, but it's more like there are agents that build up the knowledge graph, and then there are different agents that then consume that knowledge or consume information that other agents have generated. So yeah, I probably pause here.
This is really like such an exciting field, because it's, especially when you say there's both consumption and production side of it, but there's also like a really nice angle to it that I think is coming from natively Web3, or what you guys have been doing for so long, which is prediction markets, which really, really well complements knowledge graphs. The notion of prediction is kind of a very, very, let's say, old problem within the knowledge graph space, which is, in a way, when you see graphs, there's like, it's always kind of some entities and relations, right? So for example, Martin is Branimir's friend, or friend of Branimir, something like that. There's two things, and then in between there's a relation. So there's kind of the traditional set of problems here is either you have two things and then you try to predict what the relation in between is, even though the knowledge graph doesn't know it yet. Or the other way around is you don't have the things, you have one thing and some form of relation, and then you kind of try to predict what's on the other end. So for example, if the knowledge graph doesn't have this information, it cannot say like, okay, so who is all friend of Martin? And then using the knowledge within the knowledge graphs would sort of give you some probability of what other entities in the graph could be there. And that's kind of a classic way to look at it from knowledge graph perspective. What's really great about prediction markets is that you can really use this notion, I believe it's called the wisdom of the masses, right? In that sense that it provides this economic incentive for people to reveal information, or people or agents. Well, I guess people are also in some way agents. We do agentic behavior. So it's really exciting. And for me especially, I would love to see like how these two help each other. Because I think literally before Gnosis and DKG were connected in this way, this was not possible. Nobody was doing this because it was either one or the other. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm super excited to see how this could work.
One comment on your comment. So yes, so I think that specifically the part about that with prediction markets, you automatically have the right economic incentives. That is super important, because in the world of agents, you have, of course, the problem that, you can come say, you have here trusted entities and they vouch for that content. And if you have that, great. But if you enter this world of agents, then kind of everything is kind of untrusted to some degree, and everything is somewhat unreliable. So it's very important in that world to have robust, kind of economic correction mechanisms in a way. And there, a prediction market does very well, because, you could short-term, you could make a prediction that is very wrong. But the idea is that if you do that, then you are essentially opening yourself to losing that money. And the idea is if there are enough agents in that space, that then basically the ones that do wrong predictions will lose money, and kind of those who are right and who are kind of contributing useful information or are generating actual knowledge, that they will kind of dominate or take over.
In a way, it's so interesting because it goes into the direction of predicting and mapping the predicted future in sort of one future world model. Not in the sense of an AI model, but like in the sense of, I don't know if you had a chance to touch upon that paper by Jan LeCun, where he discussed this kind of model of the world of basically he models AI as kind of like a animal brain, and that has like agents that provide actions, and it's a really, really exciting paper. And then the world model that it has inside is obviously very important. Then also the predicted world model. So what is statistically going to maybe look like? This is a really interesting notion for us, because with the upcoming version of OriginTrail, it's version 8, we aim to go into something we call the autonomous decentralized knowledge graph. So the idea that knowledge graph together with services on it, such as AI agents, for example, on Gnosis, would be possible to actually let a lot of the things run autonomously. As it grows, that agents with some form of consensus, like you mentioned, and with the right incentives, is able to actually like immediately predict. This would be amazing for businesses. And we see that actually in real implementations already. For example, in the railways, we maybe wouldn't kind of associate that normally with Web3, but we've been active in this space for a very long time with Swiss Railways. And actually, last week, we spoke with them in the Brussels at the GS1 Global Forum. What they're trying to do is actually gather enough information to predict where they will have a problem within their rail network, which effectively is like basically a problem of the scale of a train going off tracks. It's really exciting, but it's not going to happen without actually getting all of this knowledge somewhere and letting the machines do their thing, right?
Yeah, in a way, you will have a continuous spectrum from eventually you will have the kind of pure knowledge graph where you say that's authoritative and that's basically a verified state of the world. So the assumption is eventually you will have that. But until you have that, you have this fluid state where you're basically already predicting that eventual authoritative state. And again, that can be extremely useful because for many things you don't have that authoritative state yet, but you still kind of need to deal with it or kind of need to make assumptions about it.
It's an incredible field. I'm really looking forward to seeing it in action on Gnosis more. But yeah, I guess, Jonathan, I'm sorry, I saw you pop up. I was trying to hijack your role here, but you're in the lead, so...
No, I'm having it easy today. I'm just sitting back and relaxing. It's nice. And plus, you asked like 2 different questions I was going to ask. So
beautiful. Yeah, and I'm known for the guy who speaks the most among this crowd here. That's why I lose the voice. But yeah.
This is what you get with agents. Branimir is becoming your autonomous agent.
Exactly. Branimir is already an AI agent. But I guess on the topic of AI, one of the themes that's in the description of today's episode is securing the quote-unquote verifiable internet in the age of AI. So when I think of this, like if I'm putting myself in the mind of the average person, I think verifiable internet. Okay, well, I see a fact about something. I just go to Google. I'll type in, I don't know, what's something innocuous. How did Seinfeld end? And I'll Google that and I'll get the answer. Well, I'll go to Wikipedia and I'll Google Seinfeld and I'll just get the answer. And it's right, correct? Because Google tells me and because Wikipedia tells me. So, or on the topic of AI, I can go to ChatGPT and I'll ask ChatGPT, how did Seinfeld end? And it'll tell me the answer and I'll verify it that way. So what makes OriginTrail unique in this regard? How does it ensure that the data that it is giving me is actually verified, or how do I as a user verify it in a way that maybe I can't do just by going to Wikipedia or ChatGPT, which is this topic is especially important in the age of AI and as more AI agents contribute knowledge autonomously. So where does OriginTrail fit into all of this?
Yeah, I think we kind of skipped almost the first use case and went straight to the second, more complex one. So the first one is obviously that AI agents, if you just today ask them something, then let's say LLMs, if you ask them something, then most of the time they will probably get it right. But of course, there is a risk that they don't get it right. So here, I think the very clear first use case is that was described, that essentially this formal query language is not really user-friendly, but that you can essentially now use AI to vary a knowledge graph and therefore get an authoritative answer, but still kind of use human language and get a human response, but with the link to a actual, kind of authoritative source. So again, that's kind of the first use case where the AI is essentially just a consumer of the graph. The second use case then is, and again, that is more complex, but I think extremely exciting, is the whole thing. We try to discuss where essentially the AI agents will become also a contributor to the graph and kind of try to overcome the problem that they are unreliable by using clever market mechanisms, by using multiple sources. But eventually the goal is that, then the graph can be expanded dramatically and we kind of have much more about the world in this structured format than we have today. And that agents will play a big role in building that.
So you're obviously very personally interested in this idea of AI and AI agents, and obviously so is the OriginTrail team. But do you think there's something particular about the Gnosis chain specifically that makes it a good place for this activity to happen?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a mix of a few things. So, there are pure technical things there. I think we check a few boxes. We are just a stable chain. We provide cheap enough block space, or transaction fees are cheap enough. But I think maybe even more important part is if you want to come to a chain, then what really differentiates chains might be what other applications are already there, or what other kind of stuff is there and what can you plug into. And there, everything around AI agents certainly became a priority for us, and we are trying to build a cluster around it. So, for example, if OriginTrail wants agents to consume its knowledge, well, then it's good news that on Gnosis there are plenty of agents running, doing currently, I think, in the range of 30 to 50,000 transactions. I forgot the numbers exactly, but per week or per day. I don't know. But kind of in total, I know that right now 50% of all safe transactions are originated from agents right now on Gnosis Chain. So long story short, we have a vibrant and growing agent ecosystem, and therefore, kind of it does make sense to plug in there and kind of, in a way, offer your services or kind of try to connect them to those agents and expand on them.
Yeah, I think this is what gets the future of Web3 even more exciting. I think up until now, Web3 didn't really have a killer app. And it does seem that the verifiable internet might provide this killer app for the entire Web3 that is going to drastically transform the way we seek information, the way we find our ways in this world. And we're noticing already this with our partners, with our clients, with our users. It's been interesting to witness a journey from one of our users, partners, who's now getting ready for digital and also a TV campaign somewhere in the Southeastern Europe. It was interesting to follow the reactions the person had, the chief marketing officer, after testing out the first solution, which was essentially kind of a ChatGPT-like solution, but for that specific purpose, pre-launched for them. And funny thing was, it made her smile. That's an interesting thing. Pretty much an artificial intelligence making you smile. And that was even before, we were tapping into the verifiable sources of knowledge. And imagine how if people get so much excited about something that is based on Web3, and now if we add incentives to that, things can get really explosive. And I'm really excited about the white paper 3.0 that we're launching within this week. The first working version will be released tomorrow. And there's a new notion that we're describing in there. It's called paranetworks. And paranetworks are essentially a collection of knowledge assets, most predominantly built for a specific use case. But also the paranets also allow users and operators of those paranets to select a chain that is most optimal to be essentially ingesting or producing the knowledge assets on that paranet. And Gnosis Chain seems to be a very, very good candidate for, I would even say, most of the contemporary AI applications because of its agents that are running and transacting on each chain. It's going to be really exciting to see how much more powerful this modularity will become between projects like Gnosis and OriginTrail. And even just recently, we started working with an international sports organization. You know how important it is in the sports world to be really sure that the results, the predictions, that everything, collection of knowledge about competition can be made verifiable because, there's a lot of finances also involved in the sports organizations and in the sports globally. And this is where, Gnosis and OriginTrail can also provide a very, very exciting substrate to elevate the value that the Web3 is going to bring. So it does feel that the AI has opened up floodgates for a killer app to come to life. I don't know what you guys think, but to me, it definitely feels so.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of complex technologies like a blockchain, for example, I still to this day, even though it's not that young anymore, like people have a hard time of grasping not just how it works, but what it can do. And same goes for all of this new stuff. I mean, also knowledge graphs, like it's not easy. We know about it because we've been working on it for 10 years, but even an average person doesn't. So with AI, we get this capability of just bridging the gap much easier. And as Martin said, the first use case of just making it easy to use is incredibly powerful. And then think of these, let's say, traditional businesses such as the railways that I mentioned. Like the people working in that industry are not as tech savvy as they are, in our world of Web3. Just by enabling them to get in touch with this technology is incredible enabler. It unlocks an incredible amount of use cases. Just by making it easier is going to be an incredibly exciting time. And then plus all of this exciting, great, one would say almost futuristic stuff we're talking about here, because we're literally talking about, in a simplified way, kind of a future-telling machine. And it's going to be very, very exciting and how we live in that world. But also, I think also one really important point is we also run into the situation where with this ease of use, there's going to be also ease of producing content. It's essentially content on the web has been growing exponentially over the years, right? Over all of the years. And then now we get into the situation where it's literally cheaper and cheaper every day to produce new, really high quality content. Like if you asked me a few years ago, like, would it be this easy for something to, like, I don't know, go to AI and you say, write me a poem in the style of Shakespeare or write me a Python script that does this, normally you would kind of need a programmer or like a poet, a very talented one. And turns out AI can do that very easily, but not just that, like generate video and all of this stuff. So what happens when we cross the threshold where there's more synthetic generated data on the web than real data? And actually, that's kind of a tricky point because a lot of the research and the latest literally happenings around the last couple of days show that we might be reaching something called model collapse. Because as models basically learn on pretty much all of the data that's real, and it starts learning on the data that it has generated, it starts actually deteriorating in performance, which kind of makes sense because it kind of deteriorates this sample of possible things or futures in the world by generating all of the possibilities, and therefore the model can no longer distinguish what makes sense or doesn't because everything starts making sense. So in this world, I think agentic activity in the way we talked about it here is going to be extremely important because we're going to have the ability to use verifiable knowledge and we're going to be able to predict what's actually possible using some real input rather than being scared of synthetic input. And this is a really, really good point because I think all of these big LLM companies, they're basically scrambling for data. But because synthetic data is effectively inflationary, it's like, money printer go burr, right? We basically need a way to find what is real, what is the real information. And that's going to be what we're talking about here, this verifiable internet. So we're very excited to see actually how that works with this new feature that we're talking about here today and the couple of days ago, which is called paranets on the DKG. So the ability to launch essentially bundled knowledge assets with bundled services such as AI agents on a particular chain to enable or services that are off-chain as well, such as, for example, services with Google, for example. You might want to use Gemini. So somebody like Google actually could benefit from all of this verifiable information, for example, in their grounding API that they use to verify the outputs of the models. So a Paranet, for example, within a kind of a Google Paranet would be able to benefit from, let's say, being launched on Gnosis, using the agents on Gnosis, but also combining it with its own services on Google side and being able to essentially merge these two worlds together. So yeah, that's going to be very exciting. I'll close it here. Does anybody want to take it over?
I have maybe one question for you guys. So let's say someone kind of has more than Gnosis background and hears maybe about OriginTrail here for the first time. What would you say for them is a good starting point to get involved or do something?
Yeah, definitely jumping to the docs. Like there's a lot of information there on how one can literally build something with OriginTrail. There's a new white paper coming out literally within the next couple of days, which we're releasing, that is going to explain all the stuff we talked about today. We're also refreshing our Discord channel. So that's also going to be a really, really good place to come in and interact with everybody building within the community. And finally, also, there's a bunch of programs for builders called ChatDKG through this ChatDKG framework. So it's a really great question, and we should actually post all of those links after the episode so that the Gnosis community can get involved.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful information. And I think we can also include those in the show notes for this episode. So I'll make sure that those get included. We are basically at the hour. So I guess I'll ask just one short closing question, and each of you can go around and give me your soundbite answer to this. But to close things off on another positive note, what is like an exciting current favorite or upcoming real world, real value project, tool, use case that's being built on the DKG right now or being built on Gnosis right now that people can go and check out if they want to learn more about either one of these projects and what the actual impact is?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many. What we built, essentially, we rebuilt the way you're being served food in some of the restaurants, or particularly in one of the restaurants close to our offices. You can verify where the food is coming from, and you can chat with the menu using AI and AI based on the DKG. So I'm not going to say that's my first personal favorite, but I would mention it because I like food. But there are so many others, from the new stuff coming. Also new European projects that are yet to be announced, the sports organization getting involved, the TV commercial that's going to be aired. There's going to be plenty of fun, plenty of laughter around the applications that are coming out. And perhaps the culmination of all of it is our ability to allow also other builders to tap into the DKG and also Gnosis to set up Paranets, which is essentially DKG commoditized, and then launch their own solutions. This is where the real magic starts happening. And for that purpose, we're also releasing a new white paper tomorrow. We're reforming Discord and making it more user-friendly for developers to come in and learn and then get their hands dirty themselves and see how it goes.
I think it's really, really also exciting in the Gnosis ecosystem. Perhaps Martin can just give us a few highlights there as well. Gnosis Pay, I suppose, is one of the latest cool things.
Yeah. Now, if you specifically talk about real-world things, I have to mention here the Gnosis Pay card. It's a self-custodial Visa card where you can literally link the safe that you hold on Gnosis Chain that you fully control and kind of is self-custodial. Link that to a card in such a way that literally, like if you tap the card, it will trigger an on-chain transaction. And if you spend something for 15 euros, exactly 15 euros and not more will be transacted from your safe. So, and that opens up essentially it opens up a whole world of possible integrations between the payment process and anything you can imagine that can happen on chain, be it DeFi integrations, be it NFTs as reward programs. There's really a big possibility. Or kind of another perspective is, right, previously kind of the on-chain world and the off-chain world were kind of separated. So you could do things on chain and DeFi was all kind of working fairly well. But if you actually want to buy coffee, usually you would need to go to a centralized exchange and it would take some time. And then you would need to sell your tokens and then you would need to withdraw and that would take some time again. So there was the two worlds were quite separate. And now it is totally integrated and you can essentially stay in this on-chain world.
I think that's a great note to leave the episode on, a very positive and inspiring note. If you spend enough time in the crypto space, you hear about a lot of vaporware projects, a lot of hype that doesn't really lead into anything. And I think that if you are listening to this podcast, then you should hopefully understand now that these are two projects that are not just about hype. These are real world adoption. I'm saying that as a third party here, as somebody who's just an observer of the space. I think you should definitely check these two projects out if you're interested in getting beyond the hype of the crypto space. Hope that wasn't too promotional, but I am neutral in this. That's just my third party thought here. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. Special thank you to Martin for joining us, taking time out of his, I'm sure, very busy day to explain all this stuff about artificial intelligence and the excitement behind it and all the wonderful things that Gnosis is doing. Thank you, Tomaž, Branimir, and Žiga, for also taking times out of your day and for taking the time every month to be here. So if you liked what you heard here and you want to participate, you want to check it out, we'll be right back here next month with a brand new episode, new exciting topics, and we hope to see everybody there. And again, submit your questions. If we didn't get to them today, if they're relevant to the topic next time, submit them in advance, and we will do our best to incorporate them into the conversation. So thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.
This has been On Track, brought to you by OriginTrail. If you like what you heard, consider giving the show a follow and leaving a 5-star review. You can keep up to date with OriginTrail on Twitter/X at origin_trail. That's ORIGIN_TRAIL. And you can follow me, your host, at MadDopeMadic. That's MADDOPEMADIC. Until next episode, trace on and stay on track.